They think 50 to 70% of all of us will get exposed to it.
So by social isolation, the thinking is we're not going to stop it. People are still going to get this. It's still going to be transmitted, but it's not going to be that big hump. That's what the isolation is all about.
The reason we're all on lockdown or social distancing is that they're assuming everyone potentially has it and doesn't know it because they don't have enough tests.
So when we end the isolation, we will probably see an uptick again, but we aren't going to see that big curve, and the healthcare system can manage it. And hopefully enough people have developed an immunity, either a natural immunity, which is they're thinking some people may actually have a natural immunity, or an immunity because they have had the virus and survived it. And by this time, some of these fast-track medications may help to create that. And then we're looking ultimately at what's called a herd immunity. This is the question, what happens next? In an ideal world, what would happen is that the isolation has been so complete that people have followed those recommendations to such a degree that the virus has burned itself out and that we all go back to our lives. The reality is that not everyone is following those. And when this quarantine period is over, that virus is still going to be viable in some segments of our population. That is pretty much a given right now.
This is actually it's not a living thing, right? And I think a lot of people have a strange relationship with it because they feel like it's this enemy that's going to live anywhere and wait to get us, right?
A virus does not even meet the biological definition of life. People say, well, if it's not alive, how can we kill it? And we can't kill it. You can't kill what is not alive. What we're doing is we're trying to deactivate it. You can think of it as information. All a virus is genetic information, DNA, very simple DNA that is wrapped in a lipid, a protein shell that protects it. And as long as that shell is intact, that is when the DNA is viable. Simple things like washing our hands actually break down that outer shell so that the information in that virus is no longer viable.
The worst thing for people is to sit in front of the television doing nothing but being filled with anxiety and not eating well, not exercising, because guess what? That will really damage your immune system. And if your immune system is damaged, when you get this virus, you're going to be much sicker.
Mushrooms, for example, there are peer-reviewed studies of mushrooms, very specific kinds of mushrooms. Agarikon is an antiviral mushroom. Turkey tail, an antiviral mushroom. Some reishi has some antiviral as well as antibacterial effects. And the reason they work is because this virus, it's a spherical virus that has protrusions on the outside. Some people are calling them spikes, but when I see them under the microscope, they look more like protrusions. They don't look like, sharp, pointy spikes. Those protrusions are looking for places on the exterior of our cells, receptors is what they're called, where they can dock, just like a space shuttle docks to the space station. Is what they're doing. And the supplements, the antiviral supplements, such as the mushrooms, what they do is they blunt those protrusions or deactivate those proteins so that even though they may find a human cell, they cannot communicate with that cell. So they're meaningless to us. We're not infected by the virus. It is a very bizarre way of thinking that's something that we cannot even see with a naked eye. It's hard to see with a microscope, and it is something that's not even alive. It's just changed our planet forever. It will take a season for our bodies to learn what to do and how to develop the antibodies. We will develop, as a species, we will develop the antibodies. We are literally designed to meet these kinds of challenges. Our body knows exactly what to do if our body is given what it needs to do that. So our body knows when that virus is in our body, there's an attack from our white blood cells that will identify it, they will attack it, we'll start creating antibodies. In the process of doing that, our body will create a fever to raise our core temperature to make us inhospitable to a foreign virus. So that's what the fever is doing. This virus attacks the receptors. Those little protrusions are specific for receptors on the cells in the lung, in the human lung, and particularly in the lower lungs. So this is a little bit different than the the upper bronchial kinds of infections, deep in the lungs. So our job is to give our bodies what it needs to keep us strong, so that we can sustain ourselves in that battle, that we ultimately are successful in if our body is given what it needs.
The response to this and the virus itself may have a more devastating effect socially and civilizationally, and how we live and our livelihoods and what have you, than the virus itself.
We can't go back into the world that we knew 3 or 4 weeks ago, because that world no longer exists. We're entering into a new normal.
I'm not sure that anything's going to be quite normal as before. This may be a civilizational change. We'll see.
The question is, what does that new normal look like? The answer is, we don't know, because we're determining it right now. The choices we make right now are determining the world that is emerging.
The virus may run its course, but the havoc it will play in society in terms of the economy and unemployment and people really being distressed will be longer lasting, frankly, than the virus.
I believe, more than think, I believe we're going to be better people. I believe we're going to have a better world because of what we've just gone through, because it has exposed the cracks in the foundation of society, the cracks in the foundation of our systems that we rely upon. What's sustainable, what's not, what works, what doesn't work.